Hello, everybody. Hello, Madam Member, Minister Council, and I'm Mojtaba Nazari. I'm the RCIC, and my colleague Asma Mohran is here. We are going through to the questions and examining of the appellant, Philip Torres. And hi, Philip Torres. Are you uh, okay in the English language in this meeting, or you need the interpreter?
Hello everyone. I'm fine with English.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and if you're okay, I'm gonna start. When did you first come to Canada,
I landed Canada on 22nd October 2013.
and what was your status when you came, and under what category?
I came as a permanent resident under Federal Skilled Worker category under Express Entry.
And tell us about your family situation. Are you married? Do you have any children?
I was widowed into uh, 2012, and my late wife she passed away in a car accident. I have a daughter of 12 years old. Her name is Marcella.
Did Marcella come with you to Canada?
No, actually, when we started planning for the immigration, we decided that I would go alone first, and later on, in the duration of the time processing, my wife passed away, and I left my daughter behind. And I thought that once I will get established in Canada, I will sponsor her.
Then who was taking care of Marcella?
Marcela stayed with my grandmother in Brazil.
Please describe your relationship with your grandmother. So,
I was raised by my grandmother when my two sisters, Maria and Anna, we were so young. Our parents died in a car accident, and our grandmother raised us. She was like a mother to me. She was our guardian angel. I wanted Marcella to be raised by loving family member until I can arrange her to join me.
and was your plan to establish yourself in Canada successful?
Initially, I would say yes. I got a great job as an IT specialist in a renowned company, Nikon, at Toronto branch, and I was in a committed relationship with my girlfriend at that time. Her name was Rosemary. In 2014, after being in a several months of dating, we also bought a condo together with both of us on title.
Did you make plans to bring Marcella?
Yes, of course. In 2014, I applied to sponsor my daughter, and her application was initially approved in February 2016.
So, did Marcella come to Canada to live with you?
Unfortunately, never.
Uh, why was that?
Because when her application was approved, I was no longer in Canada. I was in Brazil taking care of my mother.
When did you go to the Brazil to take care of your grandmother?
Sorry. On 15th March 2015, I received a call from my sister, Maria, that our grandmother is very ill and somebody needs to take care of her. So immediately I went to Brazil.
Why couldn't your sister Maria or Anna didn't take care of her?
Maria lives in Portugal with her husband and her three children. In fact, two of them are very young twins, so she could not do it. And Anna lives in London with her husband and three young children, so she could not take care of our grandmother either.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
sorry, I'll take over. So, Philip, why couldn't you arrange for caregiving for your grandmother at the time?
We tried to arrange a caregiver, but my grandmother was very difficult. She was getting really angry with them and could not let anyone else but only me to do something for her, and nobody stayed because of her behavior.
So, you had to stay with your grandmother in Brazil. In regards to your job in Canada, were you able to make any arrangements with regards to your job?
Initially, I took 3 months leave of absence without pay. When I saw my grandmother, it was not getting better. I requested for a second 3 months leave of absence, and that was even not enough time. So I requested the third time, a total of 9 months of leave I took from them.
So, how did your employer handle that? Was he okay, understanding of your situation?
Uh, I would say initially, yes, they gave me 9 months leave of absence. However, when I requested for the more time, I was informed that due to a long absence, my position became redundant and was let go.
I see. So during your time in Brazil, did you maintain your relationship with your girlfriend, Rosemary? Did you come to Canada to visit her, or did she go to Brazil to visit you?
Uh, I could not go to visit her in Canada. I had to take care of my grandmother and my daughter. I cannot leave them alone. This was a full time job for me at that moment, and I could not get away. Rosemary was terrible. He has a terrible fear of flying, so she could not visit me either. We communicated to each other via phones and texts.
So how is your relationship with with Rosemary now? Are you both still together?
Initially, our relationship was much better, but after when I came to Brazil, we could not maintain that relationship. And in 2016, Rosemary break up with me. She said that she is in relationship. Our relationship is not working, and she has somebody. She has relationship with somebody else.
So speaking of the situation in Brazil, how did you support yourself while you were taking care of your grandmother? Were you able to find any employment during that time?
Uh, it was really very hard time for me. I was living off my saving. I could not work because I was taking care of my grandmother, and that was only a full time task for me. There was no time between the hospitals, doctor's visit, and general duties for my grandmother, such as lifting her from bed, taking her to the bathroom, washing her, and feeding her. She required 24 hours of care.
I see. So how is your grandmother's situation? Is someone taking care of her now?
No, unfortunately, she is no more with us. She passed away in February 2018.
So after your grandmother passed, did you apply for your permanent resident travel document?
Yes, I did in September 2019, and that document got refused.
So do you know why it was refused?
Because I was not meeting the requirements to be physically present in Canada for 730 days within the initial 5 year of immediate time period after my landing.
I see. And did you ask the officer to consider any humanitarian and compassionate factors in this application?
Yes, I wrote a letter to the officer explaining about my situation.
I see. So why did you not make any efforts to return to Canada sooner? You mentioned that your grandmother died in February of 2018. However, you submitted your application in September of 2019, actually. So is there a reason for that delay?
Yes, I was really facing financial struggling. I was financially struggling at that time. I could not afford to pay for my return tickets to Canada. Even I do not wanted to leave my grandmother behind. And I was leaving to figure out my best options to bring my daughter along. As soon as I was able to collect some money, I realized that I can return to Canada now, and I updated IRCC about my situation to issue a new PR visa for my daughter so
Right.
that I could
So,
go back.
right. So thinking back of when you left Canada, did you have any intentions of returning?
Yes, of course. When I left Canada, I was not aware that I would not be able to come back. Like, I filed all my taxes in 2015, and after that, I did not work. I even requested a leave of absence from my job. I did not quit. I had a girlfriend, a condo, and a friend. I applied to sponsor my daughter. I had my whole life in Canada already planned.
All right. Thank you, Philip. That's the end of my examination. Honorable member, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Hi, now this is Ritu. I will be acting as a RCIC and I would be finally submitting the submission. Madam Member, we are not disputing that our client failed to comply with the Section 28 1 of the Act. That is a fact. However, when considering the residency requirement obligation, officer may issue PRTD on humanitarian and compassionate ground as per Section 28C of the Act. And I quote, a determination by an officer that humanitarian and compassionate consideration relating to a permanent resident, taking into the account the best interest of the child directly affected by the determination, justifying the retention of permanent resident status, overcome any breach of the residency obligation prior to the determination. Our client sent a letter to the officer explaining his humanitarian and compassionate factors that should be considered by the officer. Please see the letter in our disclosure. However, the officer refused the application for the following reason. The first of them was duration of the time spent in Canada and no efforts to return to Canada at the earliest opportunity. Evidence of establishment in Canada is insufficient. Third, applicant and his family would not face any hardship in Brazil due to loss of the status in Canada. Fourth, family contact may be maintained and support continued, and it has been no hardship due to loss of status. Fifth and last, the best interest of the child. I would like to address those concerns. So, the first one is the duration of time spent in Canada is undisputable. However, reasons for the appellant absence and efforts to return to Canada at the earliest opportunity were overlooked by the officer. We submitted in our disclosure correspondence of the applicant with his employer requesting unpaid leave of absence from his work. In his request, the appellant clearly states that his reason for the request are due to his grandmother's condition. It also shows he was not getting paid. We also submitted his notice of assessments and pay stubs showing he had a good job and was well established himself in Canada. His bank records showing his expenses on his grandmother. We also submitted proof of property ownership by the appellant and the sales agreement of that property. Although the appellant's grandmother had passed away in February 2018, he could not move back immediately due to the lack of available funds. However, as soon as the sale of his condo was finalized, he immediately made the arrangements to his return. For the second concern, the reason why he was not show evidence of establishment in Canada goes to show how dedicated the appellant was to his grandmother. Prior to his departure from Canada, the appellant was very well established in Canada. He had a steady job where he was liked and appreciated. He paid taxes. He was in committed relationship and they brought a house together. Due to his devotion to his grandmother who raised him, the appellant lost his job, his house, and his relationship. The appellant still maintained a friendship with Mr. Javier Pote, who still has his belonging in his garage. For the third concern, we would say that the appellant already faced undue hardship due to loss of his status in Canada. As mentioned above, he lost everything he worked for. If appeal is not granted, the appellant would suffer greatly for being a loving grandson. We are not disputing fourth point. For the last one, we would say that as for the best interest of a appellant's child, it is true Marcella has never been to Canada. However, it is undisputable that she can have a much better life in Canada, especially now after her father has lost everything. Now being not being allowed to Canada would have a tremendous impact on appellant's future and a direct result of his child's future. Canada has many more opportunities than Brazil, and not being allowed to return would deprive the appellant's daughter from a better future. To sum it up all, I would say that the appellant was accepted to Canada under express entry stream. He found a good job. He was in a committed relationship. He made friends and even bought a house. The appellant applied to sponsor his daughter. The appellant initial application was approved. Due to unfortunate circumstances and a high moral compass, the appellant lost his job, his house, and his relationship. There is no clearer case where humanitarian and compassionate factors should be considered. We kindly request we kindly request the member to allow the appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.